Well, James, it's good to be with you today. I just wanted to talk to you about season four. You played Bernard at Star Labs. Tell me about the character and what it's been like joining the team.
Bernard, he can't shoot lasers out of his eyes or fly or lift really heavy objects, but he's very smart and he's very passionate and he cares a lot. And he has a long history that we've not seen, but he's been working at Star Labs for a while, running special projects. He's worked with Batman, he's worked with Superman, he's worked with all the greats. And I think he really believes in the work that superheroes can do, even though he's not out there in the field usually himself. He wants to support them in whatever way they can. And I think what's funny about the Titans is because they occupy that weird middle space of some of them are still adolescents and figuring it out. And some of them used to be sidekicks. And they're sort of in that middle ground between sidekick and full-blown superhero. He does end up pulled more into the action than he might usually would be. I think he's been kind of just a superhero professional all this time, just building gadgets and sending work reports. And then the Titans come in and they sort of blow a hole through his typical schedule. But it's been really fun. I think part of him, he's always wanted to feel a little bit like a superhero. And so I think getting so much face time with the Titans and getting to feel like he's in the missions, doing stuff, doing the science, helping them figure it out is incredibly validating and exciting for him, even when it's really scary and confusing and involves giant 10-foot snakes. So yeah, it's been great. And for me personally, huge fan of the show, huge fan of the cartoon and the comic books when I was younger, really, really big fan. And so for me as an actor, for me as James, just coming onto the show has been just such a gift, such an incredible opportunity. I still can't really, it's crazy when I have these interviews and I'm you did that. You were on Titans, and getting to meet the cast, getting to hang out with them. They really are not actual superheroes, but I don't know. They feel like superheroes to me. And each of them were hired to play those roles for very obvious reasons. And they really do exemplify the redeeming, shining qualities of those characters. And so they're such a joy to be around just as people, and then also so much fun to work with.
I first saw you on the screen over the pandemic watching the show You. Obviously, you played Forty Quinn. My wife and I love that show. You were great. So then I hear you're joining Titans, and I'm like, oh man, that's super cool. The contrast between the two characters is just night and day. Talk about your preparation for You, and now you're Bernard, this more reserved guy, kind of behind the scenes guy, but like you said, you're kind of coming out to be more in the action. Whereas 40 was I'm in your face, I'm at the party.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's just such a difference. So what was the difference for you preparing for this role of Bernard?
It was a little bit of a fast turnaround. And also, I would say the moment where it really came into clarity for me was my final fitting for my costumes for season 4, because we had one fitting where they were going in sort of a completely different direction with him. And then I think, the executive producers looked at that and were like, maybe not. Actually, let's try this. And so I went back in. It was given a lot of vests, a lot of ties. They got me that little name tag. And I was like, okay, now I feel like who they want this person to be is taking a little more shape. And between that and what I just sort of, when you audition, you just kind of throw out there what you think they want. And you're like, I hope that this is what they were looking for. And based on my audition and then the fitting and having a couple conversations with the writers, I was sort of able to stitch this person together. And I got lucky that I loved playing 40. What a hoot. But Bernard is at rest closer to my personality as a human. I hope, than 40 is. And so it was, it was really just about imagining that version of myself in that environment, right? And I think the joy of getting to play Bernard, and what I had a lot of fun with, is he is kind of like buttoned up, but then it's like how fastidious, how like buttoned up can you remain when you're elbow deep in goo and running from giant snakes and fighting witches, and finding those little moments of, even for somebody like him, such a professional, being like, what is going on right now? What have we gotten ourselves into? And then also just sort of like figuring it out with the cast. It's the first time I've ever season 2 of You, except for Penn, it was basically an entirely new cast. But with Titans, they've obviously all been there for 3 seasons up to this point, and they've got it down. They know what the job is. They found a rhythm. They know the story they're trying to tell and how to execute that story. And so it was just sort of like reading the room and figuring out how the jokes worked and how the timbre of the scene should run. And I feel like that fit with Bernard's arc. Bernard's arc sort of mirrored James' arc through the series, which was, he gets there, he's really excited to meet these people, and then he's just sort of trying to figure out how to exist amongst them in a helpful way. And so I just sort of, I just used that excitement. I used the cues I got from Greg and the other writers. I will say this Bernard is very different, obviously, from Bernard as he's realized in the comic books, which was a gift in some ways, because I was like, okay, I'm glad I'm not trying to basically recreate exactly the character in the comic books, who I am already at rest, obviously very different from in many ways. But also it was like, okay, I'm sort of just out here freeballing. I get to kind of make this guy whoever I want him to be. And, I think the writers, I think we had fun together, sort of like fleshing him out across the 4th season. And it would be my dream to get to return to him at some point, maybe, now that I feel like we all have like a solid understanding of who he is as a character, and see where he goes. But we'll see what happens.
Another thing I think people are waiting to see if it happens. So obviously Titans brought Bruce Wayne to the fold, which a lot of people thought like that could never happen in a TV series. He was so cinematic, the movies, it was so big. Batman, Bruce Wayne, it was like untouchable, but it happened. We have started to dive into Superman exists, and Titans isn't really shying away from it. There's a huge statue outside. You guys straight up talk about him, Connor, which has been super exciting to see. What do you think it would mean to the fans, to the story, if somehow Superman shows up in Titans season 4 or beyond? Is that something you all would like to see? Or what are your thoughts?
It's funny, the breadth of like the DC comic universe it's huge. And there's so many characters off doing their own thing all the time. But I do think everyone's favorite moment is always when everybody ends up in the same room together talking to each other. So I think that would be really exciting. Those decisions are a little above my pay grade on this show. Greg Walker's not emailing me being like, hey, what do you think about putting Superman in the but I think they're probably thinking about it, once they sort of got over the Bruce Wayne hill, and then this season we finally got Lex Luthor. I think it's just, those moments are obviously really, really important to them, and they want to make sure like the introduction of a character like that to the show is done perfectly, seamlessly, and is given a big moment. So I imagine that, it would take a lot of work. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Is all I can really say, I guess.
Tim Drake, Bernard, we've started to see you guys have this connection. What's that been like for you, working with Jay Lycurgo, and obviously you and Tim's relationship in the show kind of progressing a little bit?
It was kind of a dream come true. I'm an out gay actor. I feel really passionate about advocating for and representing the community that I'm a part of. I think we've made so much progress but there's still a lot of progress to be made. And I think, you know, for a lot of fans of these shows, there are a lot of young queer fans of comic book content. Specifically, I would say Titans, because it appeals so much to a younger fan base, because these are, you know, younger characters grappling with issues that young people can really understand, you know, issues of identity and feeling lost and feeling alone, feeling isolated, not knowing where your place is or who you want to be. I think that there are like a lot of young queer people who hope to see themselves in this show and in these stories. And so it was incredibly, just hugely validating for me, especially, again, I was that young person. When I was in middle school and high school, figuring out that I was different, I was watching Teen Titans and identifying with Raven and with Beast Boy and with Starfire. And it would have been huge to me if back then one of those characters had been like, oh yeah, and by the way, you know, I'm gay. So knowing that we were accomplishing that for the fans was really meaningful. And in terms of working with Jay, who, even though he is not a member of this community, he understood the significance of what we were doing. And he took it very, very like seriously and earnestly in the best way possible. And I think he saw what it meant to me. I think he understood the sort of personal investment and stake I had in it. And he really honored that. And all of those, you know, he's an insanely talented actor. Like later in my life, it will be such a flex to be like, yeah, I got to work with him back before he was like a huge movie star. I was in one of his first big jobs with him. He's so talented, so committed, and also just like a really funny guy. We had so much fun on set. And so it was really easy to you know, to like stare at him longingly and fall in love with him on the show. And it meant a lot to me that he wasn't just like, yeah, I'm here and I'm going to execute as an actor because that's my job, but that he was aware that what we were doing was a really big deal and was going to mean a lot to a lot of people. And it's just cool, you know, because there's so many superhero stories being told now. And I don't think you necessarily have to be a super fan to play one of these roles. Sometimes it's helpful when the actor has a little bit of distance, but it is nice, this being my first time working in a comic book universe, it was nice to be working opposite somebody who takes this stuff seriously. I think a lot of people write off comic books. They're like, oh, another superhero show, another superhero movie. But it's like, we keep telling and retelling these stories over and over again. Some of these characters have existed for the better part of a century for a reason. They're important to people for a reason. And it was nice to work with so closely with somebody who understood that and honored that. Yeah, it's just something I've said. I keep trying to reframe it in every interview because I don't want to be saying the exact same thing to all of you. But when I think about what a younger version of myself would feel if he saw the show, if he saw the episodes, the moments that we're teasing but not allowed to talk about yet, it just, I can't really put into, it's like difficult to wrap my head around what that would have meant to my younger self. And I just hope that some of the young people watching the show have that experience, feel that warmth, feel seen and loved and supported, and feel like they're a part of this world that's so important to them.
Fans obviously are very vocal, especially social media. How have they been to you? I mean, they're tweeting at me all the time, trying to ask questions, trying to learn more about the show. Have you had a really good experience with Titans fans and engaging with them over the last couple of weeks?
I'm sort of finally relaxing into the idea that I'm allowed to communicate with any of them, because for a long, until the show came out, until they announced that I was going to be on it and who I was going to be, it was just people in my inbox being like, are you Roy Harper? Are you Roy Harper? Who are you? Why are you in Titans? Who are you going to be? And a couple of people in there guessing, are you going to be Bernard? Are you and Jay going to end up together? and I didn't want to ruin anything, and I didn't want to give anything away. They've been lovely. Again, specifically fans of superheroes, DC, this universe. It's not casual to them, you know, and I feel similarly. Like, I collect the comic books, I love the characters. And so it's cool to be working on a project where it's like you're sort of meeting in the middle with the fans, where they're like, this is so exciting. And you're like, I know, it's really exciting. I'm excited about it too. And they've been lovely. You know, I think, again, it's nice that it's like a really young, excited fan base. And it's just cool that, like, I feel like a lot of times in other areas of the comic book universe, the fans, in their desire to see things executed exactly as they imagined they were going to be, or exactly the way they are in the comic books, there can obviously be a little bit of tension there, maybe some creative differences. But the Titans fans, from what I've experienced of them, they're just so glad that these stories are being told and that these characters are being represented well on screen. And so, again, just getting to share in that enthusiasm with them has been lovely. All of the interactions I've had have been really lovely. And I'm still, though, just, you know, we got 6 episodes to go. I'm just still trying not to spoil anything on accident.